Do we have any more questions? Mr. Speaker, we have no more requests for time, and I'm prepared to close.
Gentlewoman reserves. Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have no additional speakers, and I, too, am prepared to close, and I yield myself the remainder of my time.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I said in my opening remarks, I'm deeply disappointed by the process that led us here, especially over the last 24 hours. Had Democratic leadership acted in good faith, we would be having a very different discussion today. I would prefer that our bipartisan, strategic competitiveness policy had not been tied to the partisan and divisive reconciliation legislation, but it would be dishonest to pretend that that hasn't been the case. And after long and careful thought over what reconciliation will mean to the economy, the expanded government, and the American people, I cannot in good conscience vote for the $52 billion in mandatory spending while knowing that hundreds of billions in taxes and partisan spending are about to bulldoze us. We know the numbers, but it's worth repeating them because they're more than numbers. As someone who studied economics, I'm very cognizant that these are, in fact, a representation of the daily life for families across America. Inflation has skyrocketed to 9.1%. Every dollar in your wallets, in your paycheck, in your retirement account, every dollar is now worth less. The next set of numbers is 1.6 and 0.9. Those are the most recent declines in our gross domestic product, GDP. While my friends on the other side of the aisle want to debate the definition of recession, let's put that nitpicking aside, step back for a moment and consider the big picture, what this means for Americans. Our economic growth is slowing, our inflation is rising, our job growth is tapering off. Americans are unquestionably worse off now than they were a year ago. And that's what I have to consider when casting today's vote. What we need right now is policy to make our economy stronger and more competitive. Not backroom deals that increase taxes on businesses and raise government spending. As I said at the start of this debate, I'm incredibly proud of the work the House Science Committee has done to create thoughtful, strategic, sustainable science and technology policy. I am grateful to Chairwoman Johnson, to the Republican and Democrat members of the Science Committee, and to all the staffers who worked to advance this legislation. While others may try to take credit, the truth is Division B was primarily developed and written by our committee, which has been working on this issue for longer than anyone on the Hill. I would like very much to cast my vote in support of our research and development policies, but I cannot ignore the consequences of doing so alongside a deeply flawed reconciliation package. I owe it to my constituents to vote in their best interests. And today that means voting against the legislation I've long supported. I'll conclude with this. I believe the bipartisan leadership of the House Science Committee represents the best that Congress can be when we work together in a transparent fashion to come to agreements that serve the American people. I believe that actions taken by Democratic leadership yesterday are a sad example of the dysfunction that plagues Congress when we ignore these details. I'm deeply disappointed in this process, and with that, even with all my admiration for my chairwoman and all the respect for our mutual members and our staffs, even with all that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The gentlewoman from